For the next 2 weeks, I was the picture of the gracious, forgiving mother-in-law. I sent Jessica a beautiful bouquet of flowers with a note. Thank you for a lovely birthday dinner. Don't worry about the dress. Accidents happen. Love, Sandra. I texted David regularly with cheerful messages about my day, asking about his work, sharing photos of my garden. I even commented positively on Jessica's Instagram posts, the ones where she showed off her perfect life in their beautiful home, driving her luxury car, wearing her expensive jewelry. The jewelry I had paid for. The car I was financing. The house I owned. But they didn't know that yet. Harold was working behind the scenes, filing paperwork, making phone calls, setting everything in motion. The beauty of his plan was its subtlety. We weren't doing anything illegal or even particularly unusual. We were simply exercising rights that had always existed but never been enforced. Patience, Harold reminded me during our weekly meetings. The most satisfying victories are the ones your opponent doesn't see coming. 3 weeks after my birthday, David called me. Hey Mom, quick question. We got this weird letter from some lawyer about the house mortgage. Something about reviewing the terms? Do you know anything about that? I was in my garden, deadheading roses. The picture of serenity. A lawyer? How strange. What did the letter say exactly? Something about the original mortgage holder requesting a review of payment terms and property conditions. It's probably just routine paperwork. It wasn't routine paperwork. It was Harold beginning the process of calling in the mortgage, something I had every legal right to do with 60 days' notice. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about, sweetheart. You and Jessica have always been so responsible with your finances. Yeah, that's what I figured. Jessica's kind of freaking out about it, but I told her it's probably just some clerical thing. Jessica was freaking out. Interesting. Well, if you need any help understanding it, you know Harold Morrison was your father's lawyer. I could ask him to take a look. That would be great, actually. Thanks, Mom. After I hung up, I sat back in my garden chair and enjoyed the irony. David was asking me to help him understand the legal papers that were going to destroy his comfortable life. That evening, Jessica posted a long Instagram story about dealing with unnecessary stress from bureaucratic nonsense. She looked genuinely rattled, her usual perfect composure cracking slightly. I double-tapped the heart on her story and added a supportive comment. Hang in there, sweetie. These things always work out. 2 hearts. The next week, Harold called with an update. The mortgage review is proceeding. I've also had an interesting conversation with the bank that holds the loan on Jessica's car. Oh, turns out that loan was guaranteed by the trust fund you established. The bank is very interested in discussing the current status of that guarantee. I felt a familiar thrill. Meaning that if the trust fund were to be restructured, the bank would want their money back immediately. And how long would they have to pay? 30 days. I did the math in my head. Jessica's car loan was for $68,000. They didn't have that kind of cash lying around. Harold, you're brilliant.
I'm Federal.
There's a difference. That weekend, David called again. This time, he sounded stressed. Mom, can we come over Sunday? We need to talk to you about some financial stuff. Of course, darling. Is everything all right? Yeah, just some paperwork confusion. Jessica thinks there might be some kind of mix-up with the house and car loans. Mix-up. Well, apparently both loans are somehow connected to your name. Which doesn't make sense, because we never asked you to co-sign anything. I smiled, looking out my kitchen window at the beautiful garden Marcus and I had planted together. That is strange. I'm sure we can figure it out when you get here. Sunday afternoon, they arrived looking like they hadn't slept well. Jessica's Instagram perfect facade was showing cracks. Her hair wasn't quite as styled, her makeup wasn't quite as flawless, and there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. Sandra, she said, and for the first time in 3 years, she hugged me. It was brief and perfunctory, but it was a hug. Fear, I realized, was making her polite. We sat in my living room, and David spread the papers across my coffee table.
So here's what we're dealing with, he began.
Apparently, the mortgage on our house is held by something called the Marcus Manson Memorial Trust, and the guarantee on Jessica's car loan is connected to the same trust. I examined the papers with what I hoped looked like genuine confusion. Marcus Manson Memorial Trust? I've never heard of such a thing. Jessica leaned forward, her voice tight. The lawyers are saying you're the trustee, that you have control over both loans. That's impossible. I would remember setting up something like that. But even as I said it, I could see the doubt creeping into their eyes. Because deep down, they were starting to realize something they'd never considered before. They didn't actually know much about my financial situation. Mom, David said carefully, maybe we should call Harold Morrison? He might be able to explain this. What a good idea, I said, reaching for my phone. I'm sure he can clear up this confusion. I dialed Harold's number, put the phone on speaker, and waited. Sandra. Harold's voice filled the room, warm and professional. How are you? I'm well, Harold. I have David and Jessica here, and we're looking at some paperwork that's very confusing. Something about a Marcus Manson Memorial Trust. There was a pause, perfectly calculated for dramatic effect. The trust. Yes, Sandra, we set that up 6 months after Marcus passed. Don't you remember? You wanted to ensure his legacy was properly managed. I let my face show dawning recognition.
Oh.
Yes, of course.
The trust.
But Harold, I don't understand why David's house and Jessica's car would be connected to it. Well, Sandra, when David needed the mortgage and when Jessica needed the car loan, you asked me to structure the financing through the trust. It provided better tax advantages and lower interest rates for them. David and Jessica exchanged glances. This was news to them. But why are we getting these review notices now? Jessica asked, her voice sharp. Harold's voice remained perfectly professional. Standard procedure, Mrs. Manson. The trust requires periodic reviews of all outstanding obligations. Nothing to worry about, assuming all terms are being met. What terms? David asked. Another perfectly timed pause. Perhaps that's a conversation for another time. Sandra, why don't you and I meet this week to review the trust documents? Then you can explain everything to David and Jessica. After Harold hung up, the room was silent. I could practically see the wheels turning in their heads. Mom, David said slowly, how much money are we talking about here? I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Behind the stress and confusion, there was something else. Shame. He was beginning to understand that his mother wasn't the dependent old woman he'd thought she was. I think, I said gently, that's exactly what Harold and I need to discuss. Jessica's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face went pale. What is it? David asked. The bank. They want to schedule a meeting about my car loan. I stood up and began collecting the papers. I'm sure everything will work out fine, I said. After all, we're family. As they left, Jessica turned back to me. Sandra, about your birthday dinner. I want you to know. Don't worry about it, dear. I interrupted, my voice warm and forgiving. It's just a dress. But my smile told a different story entirely. The next morning, Jessica called me directly for the first time in 3 years. Sandra? It's Jessica. Do you have a minute to talk? Her voice was different. Smaller. The usual confident edge was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like desperation. Of course, dear. What's on your mind? I met with the bank yesterday about my car loan. They're saying some very confusing things about my loan guarantee being terminated. I was hoping you might know something about it. I was sitting in my home office, looking at the stack of financial documents Harold had prepared. Jessica's car loan termination notice was right on top. Terminated? That sounds serious. They're saying I have 30 days to pay the full balance or they'll repossess the car. Sandra, that's almost $70,000. We don't have that kind of money just sitting around. Of course they didn't. Despite their expensive lifestyle, David and Jessica lived paycheck to paycheck. The house, the car, the jewelry, the vacations, it was all financed. All dependent on the financial foundation I had provided without them even realizing it. Have you talked to David about this?
He's in meetings all day.
Sandra, I'm scared. I don't understand what's happening. For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Jessica sounded genuinely frightened. But then I remembered her smirk as she called my dress cheap. The casual cruelty in her voice as she told me to get over it. I'm sure there's been some mistake, I said. Why don't you come over this afternoon? We can look at the paperwork together. Really? You'd do that? Of course. We're family. That afternoon, Jessica arrived alone. She looked like she hadn't slept, her usual Instagram perfection replaced by genuine human anxiety. Sandra, thank you for this. I don't know who else to ask. I led her to my living room and made tea. As I set the china cups on the coffee table, I noticed Jessica looking around my house with new eyes. Taking in the quality of the furniture, the original artwork on the walls, the subtle signs of wealth she'd never noticed before. Jessica, before we look at these papers, I want to ask you something. She nodded, clutching her teacup like a lifeline. What do you think of me? The question clearly caught her off guard. What do you mean? I mean, when you think about me, your mother-in-law, what comes to mind? She shifted uncomfortably. Sandra, I don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking for honesty. When you married David, what did you think about his mother? A long pause. Then, quietly, I thought you were nice. Maybe a little old-fashioned. What else? I thought. She stopped, clearly uncomfortable. Go on. I thought you were probably lonely, living in the past, maybe a little bitter about getting older. I nodded. And financially? Another pause. I assumed you were getting by on whatever Marcus left you, maybe some social security. You thought I was poor. Not poor, just not wealthy. I set down my teacup and smiled. Jessica, would you like to see something? I opened my laptop and pulled up my investment portfolio. The numbers filled the screen. Stocks, bonds, real estate investments, savings accounts. The total at the bottom was in 7 figures. Jessica stared at the screen, her face going through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, dawning horror. This is all yours? Marcus and I worked very hard for 34 years. We lived modestly, invested wisely, and saved aggressively. When he passed, I inherited everything. But you live so simply. I live the way I choose to live. There's a difference between being unable to afford something and choosing not to buy it. Jessica was still staring at the screen. The house we live in. I hold the mortgage. My car. Guaranteed by my trust fund. David's job. The senior partner is an old friend. He hired David as a favor to me. The full reality was finally hitting her. For 3 years, she'd been dismissing and disrespecting the woman who controlled every aspect of her comfortable life. Sandra, She stopped, her voice breaking slightly. I had no idea. Of course you didn't, because you never bothered to ask. You never showed any interest in my life, my history, or my relationship with your husband. Tears were forming in Jessica's eyes. I'm so sorry. About the dress, about everything. I never meant to. Didn't you? The question hung in the air, because we both knew she had meant it. She'd meant every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every casual cruelty. She just hadn't thought there would be consequences. What do you want me to do? She asked finally. I want you to understand something, Jessica. For 3 years, you've treated me like I was irrelevant. Like I was some pathetic old woman grateful for whatever scraps of attention you threw my way. You've been rude, dismissive, and cruel, apparently thinking there was nothing I could do about it. I closed the laptop. You were wrong. Jessica was crying now, mascara starting to run down her cheeks. Please, Sandra, tell me how to fix this. I looked at this beautiful, broken woman sitting in my living room, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Jessica, the papers you received from the bank are real. The loan guarantee has been terminated. You have 30 days to pay the full balance or lose the car. We can't pay that. Sandra, please. The mortgage review on your house is also real. I'm exercising my right to call on the loan. You have 60 days. Her face went white. You're going to take our house? I'm going to take my house. You've been living in it, but it was never yours. Where will we go? What will we do? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at my garden. I honestly don't know, Jessica, but I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, it's not like you're too old to start over. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Sandra, please. I'm begging you. I know I've been awful, but please don't destroy our lives over a dress. I turned back to her. This isn't about a dress, Jessica. This is about respect. This is about 3 years of you treating me like garbage and David allowing it to happen. This is about consequences. She was sobbing now, her perfect composure completely shattered. What can I do? How can I make this right? I considered the question seriously. I don't know if you can, Jessica, but you can start by telling David the truth about what kind of person you've been to his mother. I walked to the front door and opened it. I think you should go home now. You have a lot to think about. As she gathered her purse with shaking hands, Jessica looked at me one more time. I really am sorry, Sandra. I know you are. The question is whether you're sorry for what you did or sorry that there are consequences for what you did. After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine, good wine, from Marcus's collection, and sat in my garden.
My phone rang.
David. Mom, Jessica just got home. She's hysterical. She's saying some crazy things about you owning our house and controlling our finances. What's going on? I sipped my wine and watched the sunset paint my garden in shades of gold. I think, I said calmly, it's time you and I had a very honest conversation. David arrived an hour later, his face a mixture of confusion and anger. Mom, I need you to explain what's happening. Jessica is upstairs crying, saying we're going to lose the house and the car. She's talking about trusts and mortgages and money I didn't know existed. What the hell is going on? I was waiting for him in the living room, the same room where I'd raised him, where I'd helped him with homework, where I'd comforted him through his first heartbreak. Looking at him now, this successful, handsome man in his expensive suit, I felt a strange sadness. Sit down, David. Mom, I don't want to sit down. I want answers.
Seat. Down.
Something in my voice made him comply. He sat on the edge of the sofa, his whole body tense. David, what do you know about my financial situation? He looked irritated. What does that have to do with anything? You have Dad's pension, some savings, Social Security. You're comfortable. What do you know about the house you live in? We bought it 3 years ago. We have a mortgage with First National Bank. What do you know about Jessica's car? She financed it when we got married. The payments are manageable. I opened my laptop and showed him the same portfolio I'd shown Jessica. His eyes widened as he took in the numbers.
Jesus, mon.
Where did all this come from? Your father and I built this over 34 years of marriage. Did you think we spent everything we made? I never really thought about it. No, you didn't. You never asked about my finances, my investments, my plans for the future. You assumed I was just getting by, and that was fine with you as long as you didn't have to worry about taking care of me. He had the grace to look ashamed. That's not fair. Isn't it? When's the last time you asked me about my retirement plans? My health insurance? Whether I needed help with anything? He was quiet. I'll tell you when. Never. You've never asked because you assumed there was nothing to ask about. I pulled out the mortgage documents and spread them on the coffee table. Your house is owned by the Marcus A. Manson Memorial Trust. I am the sole trustee. You don't have a mortgage with First National Bank. You have a mortgage with me. David stared at the papers. That's impossible. Look at the signatures, David. Look at the dates. He examined the documents, and I watched his face change as the reality sank in. You own our house? I own your house. I've been allowing you to live there, charging you below market interest, and asking for no down payment. I did this because I wanted to help my son build a life. But why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't ask. Because you were so eager to feel independent and successful that you never questioned how a consultant with 3 years of experience could afford a $500,000 house. I showed him Jessica's car loan documents. The guarantee on Jessica's car loan comes from the same trust. If I withdraw the guarantee, the bank wants their money back immediately. $68,000. Which you don't have. He was starting to understand. Mom, are you saying you could take our house and our car? I'm saying I already am. The words hit him like a physical blow. He actually recoiled. What? The mortgage is being called in. You have 60 days to pay the full balance or vacate the property. Jessica's loan guarantee has been terminated. You have 30 days to pay that balance or the car will be repossessed. David stood up, pacing to the window and back. This is insane. You can't just destroy our lives because Jessica spilled wine on your dress. Sit down, David. No, I won't sit down. This is crazy, Mom. It's vindictive and cruel and... David.
Sit
Down. My voice carried the full authority of 32 years of motherhood. He sat. Now you listen to me, and you listen carefully. This isn't about a dress. This is about respect. This is about 3 years of watching your wife treat me like garbage while you stood by and let it happen. Jessica isn't that bad. Isn't she? David, your wife has been consistently rude, dismissive, and cruel to me for 3 years. She acts like I'm an embarrassment, like spending time with me is a chore she has to endure. She has a different personality. Different personality? David, let me tell you what your wife with the different personality has done to me. I began counting on my fingers. She has never once thanked me for anything I've done for your family.
She rolls her eyes when I speak.
She interrupts me constantly. She dismisses my opinions as outdated. She makes jokes about my age, my appearance, and my interests. She acts like my house is beneath her standards while living in a house I'm paying for. David was quiet, but I could see recognition in his eyes. On my birthday, she deliberately humiliated me in my own home. And when I reacted with completely understandable upset, you told me not to be dramatic. Mom, I'm not finished. For 3 years, I've watched my son choose his wife's comfort over his mother's dignity. I've watched you stand by while she treats me like a burden. And I've done it quietly, gracefully, because I didn't want to put you in the middle. I leaned forward. But that night, when you told me not to be dramatic about watching a piece of my marriage get destroyed while your wife called it worthless, that's when I realized I was done being quiet. David put his head in his hands. I didn't know the dress meant so much to you. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't know because it was easier to side with Jessica than to defend your mother. So, you're going to make us homeless? I'm going to stop enabling a lifestyle that allows you to treat me like I don't matter. He looked up at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my little boy in his eyes. Scared, confused, looking to his mother for help. "What do you want from us, Mom?" It was the first time he'd asked what I wanted instead of assuming he knew. "I want respect, David. I want acknowledgement. I want my son to act like he values his mother." "And Jessica?" I considered the question. Jessica needs to understand that actions have consequences. That treating people badly isn't consequence-free, just because you think they can't fight back. "So, what happens now?" I closed my laptop and looked at my son. "Now you go home. You and Jessica figure out how you're going to handle your situation. And you decide what kind of relationship you want to have with your mother going forward." "Are you saying you might change your mind about the house and car?" "I'm saying that respect is earned, David. And forgiveness is earned too." He stood up slowly.
Mom, I'm sorry.
"I really am." "I didn't realize." "I know you didn't. The question is what you're going to do now that you do realize." After he left, I sat in the silence of my house and felt something I hadn't expected: exhaustion. Emotional warfare, I was learning, was draining even when you were winning. But I also felt something else: power. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't the one wondering what I'd done wrong. I wasn't the one making excuses for bad behavior. I wasn't the one pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold. "How did it go?" I typed back, "Phase 1 complete. They understand the situation. And now we wait and see what they do with that understanding." 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mrs. Amanson? This is Marcus Webb from First National Bank. I believe we have some accounts to discuss." I smiled. The dominoes were starting to fall. If you're enjoying Sandra's journey, please hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear this story. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we have more power than we think we do. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of courage, justice, and reclaiming your power. Now, let's see what happens when the bank gets involved. The meeting with Marcus Webb was scheduled for Thursday morning at the bank. I dressed carefully. A black Armani suit that Marcus had bought me for his company's holiday parties, pearl earrings, and my wedding ring. I wanted to look like exactly what I was: a woman of substance. Harold met me in the bank's lobby. At 65, he still cut an impressive figure in his tailored suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his presence commanding immediate respect. "Sandra," he said, kissing my cheek. "Ready for this?" "More than ready." Marcus Webb turned out to be a man in his 40s, nervous energy radiating from him as he led us to a conference room. He'd clearly been doing his homework on my accounts. "Mrs. Amanson, thank you for coming in. I have to say, your financial portfolio is quite impressive." "Thank you. I've been reviewing the accounts connected to your son and daughter-in-law, and I have to admit, there are some irregularities in our records that I'd like to clarify." Harold leaned forward. "What kind of irregularities?" Webb opened a file. "Well, when Mr. and Mrs. Amanson applied for their home mortgage 3 years ago, they listed Mrs. Sandra Amanson as a reference. However, our records show that the actual mortgage holder is the Marcus Amanson Memorial Trust." "That's correct," I said. "And Mrs. Jessica Amanson's car loan was guaranteed by the same trust." "Also correct." Webb looked confused. "Mrs. Amanson, forgive me, but your son and daughter-in-law don't seem to understand these arrangements. When I called Mr. Amanson yesterday, he seemed genuinely surprised." Harold and I exchanged glances. "Mr. Webb," Harold said smoothly, "Mrs. Amanson has been very generous with her family. Perhaps more generous than they realize."
I see.
"Well, the reason I called this meeting is that we've received notice that the trust is withdrawing its guarantee on the car loan and calling in the mortgage. This creates some significant problems." "What kind of problems?" I asked. "Well, frankly, Your son and daughter-in-law don't have the financial resources to meet these obligations. Mr. Amanson's salary is good, but not sufficient to qualify for a new mortgage of this size. And they certainly don't have $68,000 available for the car loan. I nodded. I understand. Mrs. Amanson, I hope you don't mind me asking, but is there some kind of family dispute here? I smiled. Mr. Webb, let's just say that my son and daughter-in-law have some lessons to learn about respect and gratitude. Webb shifted uncomfortably. I see. Well, the bank's position is somewhat awkward here. We have a fiduciary responsibility to all parties. Harold leaned back in his chair. Mr. Webb, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that perhaps there's a way to resolve this that doesn't involve foreclosure and repossession. Mrs. Amanson, you clearly have the means to help your family. Perhaps some kind of restructured agreement. I considered this. What did you have in mind? Well, you could choose to reinstate the car loan guarantee and restructure the mortgage terms, perhaps with some conditions that would ensure better family relationships going forward. Harold smiled. Conditions? I'm not a family counselor, Mr. Morrison, but it seems to me that Mrs. Amanson has been taken for granted. Perhaps some formal acknowledgement of that, along with agreements about future behavior, might be appropriate. I was impressed. Marcus Webb was smarter than he looked. Mr. Webb, that's an interesting suggestion. But I'd need to see some evidence that my son and daughter-in-law understand the seriousness of this situation. What kind of evidence? I'd need them to acknowledge in writing that they understand their current lifestyle has been dependent on my generosity. I'd need assurances about future behavior. And I'd need some guarantees that this kind of disrespect won't happen again. Webb nodded. Would you be willing to meet with them here at the bank? With me present as a neutral party. I looked at Harold, who nodded slightly. I'd be willing to consider it. Excellent. I'll call them this afternoon and set something up. As we left the bank, Harold was chuckling. What's so funny? I asked. You're about to make your son and daughter-in-law negotiate the terms of their own humiliation. It's brilliant. That evening, David called. Mom, the bank wants to schedule a meeting with all of us tomorrow afternoon. They're saying there might be a way to work this out. Oh, Mom, I've been thinking about everything you said. You're right. Jessica and I have been ungrateful. We didn't realize how much you've done for us. Go on. We want to make this right. We'll do whatever it takes. I smiled, looking out at my garden where Marcus and I had spent so many happy evenings. David, I'm glad to hear that. We'll see what the bank has to suggest. Mom? Yes. I love you. I should have said that more often. Yes, I agreed. You should have. The next afternoon, I arrived at the bank to find David and Jessica already there, sitting in the lobby. Jessica looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Her usual perfect appearance was disheveled, her eyes red from crying. When she saw me, she stood up immediately. Sandra, thank you for coming. Thank you for even considering helping us. Her voice was small, broken. This was a different woman from the one who'd smirked at me across my birthday dinner table. Jessica. We were led to the same conference room. Marcus Webb had prepared documents, and the atmosphere was formal, businesslike. Let me explain the situation, Webb began. Mrs. Amanson has the legal right to call in these loans. Mr. and Mrs. David Amanson do not have the financial resources to meet these obligations. However, Mrs. Sandra Amanson has indicated she might be willing to restructure these arrangements under certain conditions. David leaned forward eagerly. What conditions? I spoke for the first time. David, I want you and Jessica to understand something. For 3 years, you've lived a lifestyle that was only possible because of my financial support. The house, the car, even David's job, all of it was connected to me. And during those 3 years, Jessica has treated me with consistent disrespect while you've allowed it to happen. Jessica started crying again. Sandra, I'm so sorry. I held up a hand. Let me finish. The conditions for restructuring these loans are simple. First, you will both acknowledge in writing that your current lifestyle has been dependent on my generosity and that you've failed to show appropriate gratitude. David nodded quickly. Yes, of course. Second, Jessica will write a formal apology for her behavior over the past 3 years, including specific incidents. This apology will acknowledge that her treatment of me has been inappropriate and hurtful. Jessica wiped her eyes. I'll do that. Third, going forward, you will both treat me with the respect due to someone who has made your lifestyle possible. This includes regular family dinners at my house, where I will be treated as an honored guest in my own home. Absolutely, David said. Fourth, Jessica will take down all social media posts that showcase a lifestyle funded by my money without acknowledgement. Any future posts that reference gifts, vacations, or purchases made possible by my financial support will include appropriate recognition. Jessica looked stricken. Her entire Instagram presence was built on showing off a luxury lifestyle. Yes, I'll do that. And finally, I said, looking directly at Jessica, you will replace my dress. Replace it. The cream silk dress you ruined. You will find an identical dress, vintage 1998, exact designer, exact color, and present it to me with a formal apology. Jessica's face went pale. Sandra, I don't know if I can find an exact replacement. That dress is almost 30 years old. Then you'll have to try very hard, won't you? Marcus Webb was taking notes. Mrs. Amanson, assuming these conditions are met, what are you prepared to offer? I'll reinstate the car loan guarantee for 1 year. I'll restructure the mortgage with more favorable terms, but maintain ownership of the property. And I'll provide David with a letter of recommendation should he need it for future employment. David looked confused. Future employment? Harold spoke up. David, your current position was arranged through your mother's connections. Your boss hired you as a favor to her. If your relationship with your mother deteriorates, that professional relationship might become uncomfortable. The full scope of his dependence on me was finally becoming clear to David. I understand, he said quietly. Webb prepared the documents. As David and Jessica signed paper after paper acknowledging their dependence on my generosity and agreeing to my conditions, I felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. As we prepared to leave, Jessica approached me. Sandra, I want you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did, and I understand what you could have done to us. Thank you for giving us this chance. I looked at this broken, humbled woman and felt something unexpected, compassion. Jessica, I hope you understand that respect isn't something you can turn on and off when it's convenient. It has to be consistent. I understand. We'll see. That evening, I sat in my garden with a glass of wine and called Harold. How do you feel? He asked. Powerful, I said, but also tired. Revenge is exhausting, even when it's justified. Harold, do you think I'm being too harsh? There was a pause. Sandra, do you think Jessica would have changed her behavior without consequences?
No.
Do you think David would have realized how he was enabling her disrespect without this wake-up call?
No.
Then you have your answer. Sometimes people need to feel powerless before they can understand how they've made others feel powerless. I sipped my wine and watched the sunset. What's next? I asked. Now we wait and see if they can actually follow through on their promises. And Sandra? Yes. Don't feel guilty for demanding the respect you deserve. You've earned it. 3 days later, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. Jessica's handwriting on the outside, my name written in careful script. I opened it in my kitchen, my morning coffee growing cold as I read. Dear Sandra, I am writing to formally apologize for my behavior toward you over the past 3 years. After our meeting at the bank, I have had time to reflect on my actions, and I am horrified by the person I have been. Specifically, I apologize for treating you with disrespect in your own home on numerous occasions, making dismissive comments about your age, your interests, and your opinions, failing to thank you for the countless ways you have supported David and me financially, interrupting you when you spoke and rolling my eyes when you shared stories, making jokes about your appearance and lifestyle choices, acting entitled to your generosity while showing no gratitude, and most specifically, for ruining your anniversary dress and dismissing it as cheap when I knew nothing about its value or meaning to you. I realize now that my behavior stemmed from my own insecurities and assumptions. I assumed you were dependent on us for companionship and would tolerate any treatment because you were lonely. I assumed you had limited financial resources and, therefore, limited power. I was wrong about everything. I have never had a mother figure in my life. My own mother died when I was 12, and I never learned how to navigate that relationship. This is not an excuse for my behavior, but perhaps an explanation. I was threatened by your close relationship with David and took that out on you in cruel and unnecessary ways. I understand now that you could have destroyed our lives completely. The fact that you have given us a chance to make this right is more generous than I deserve. I promise you that going forward, I will treat you with the respect and gratitude you have always deserved. I am currently searching for a replacement for your dress, and I will not stop until I find it. With sincere apologies and love, Jessica. I read the letter twice. It was thorough, specific, and seemed genuinely remorseful. More importantly, it showed that Jessica finally understood the reality of the situation. But the real test would be the dress. Finding a vintage 1998 designer dress in perfect condition would be nearly impossible. It was a task designed to be difficult, to require effort and creativity and genuine commitment. If Jessica could find it, it would prove she was serious about making amends. I called Harold. She sent the apology letter. I told him. How was it? Better than I expected. Detailed, specific, and it seemed genuine.
Good.
Any word on the dress? She says she's searching for it. That should be interesting. Any idea where someone would even start looking for something like that? I smiled. Actually, yes. But I'm curious to see if she figures it out. Over the next week, I watched Jessica's social media activity with interest. Her Instagram posts had completely changed. Gone were the luxury lifestyle shots, the expensive restaurant meals, the designer outfits. Instead, she was posting simple photos of sunsets, flowers, books she was reading. And she was hunting for the dress. I knew this because she called me every few days with updates. Sandra, I've contacted vintage clothing dealers in 5 states. I have one lead on a dress that might be the right designer, but it's in California. I'm sure you'll figure it out, dear. I've also reached out to the original boutique where Marcus bought it. They closed in 2010, but I tracked down the former owner. She's checking her old records. I was impressed despite myself. Jessica was putting real effort into this. 2 weeks after the bank meeting, David called with an update. Mom, Jessica is obsessed with finding this dress. She's spending hours every day on the phone with vintage dealers, estate sale companies, even contacting the designer's former employees. I've never seen her work so hard at anything. It's important to her? It seems to be. She keeps saying she has to make this right. That weekend, they came for dinner, our first family meal since my birthday. Jessica arrived with flowers and a homemade dessert, something I'd never seen her do before. Sandra, thank you for having us, she said, and this time the hug was longer, warmer. During dinner, the dynamic was completely different. Jessica asked me questions about my life, my interests, my memories of Marcus. She listened to my stories without interrupting. She complimented the meal, helped clear the table, and generally behaved like a considerate daughter-in-law. It was almost jarring after 3 years of barely concealed hostility. Mom, David said over dessert, I want you to know that things are different at home, too. Jessica and I have been talking about our relationship with you, about how we want to do better. That's nice to hear. We've also been talking about money, Jessica added, about how we've been living beyond our means and depending on your generosity without even realizing it. And we're making changes, David said. Budgeting, saving, trying to build some financial independence. I nodded approvingly. That sounds very mature. After they left, I sat in my living room and felt something unexpected. Hope. Maybe this had all been worth it. Maybe they were actually learning.
My phone rang.
Harold. How was dinner? Better than expected. They seem to be taking this seriously.
Good.
Any progress on the dress? She's trying. I have to give her credit for that. Sandra, I have to ask, what if she can't find it? What if such a dress simply doesn't exist anymore?
I had been thinking about that.
Then she'll have learned something valuable about consequences and effort. And I'll have learned something valuable about her character. And if she does find it, then I'll have learned something different about her character. 3 days later, Jessica called, and I could hear excitement in her voice. Sandra, I think I found it.
Oh.
There's an estate sale company in Connecticut. They specialize in high-end vintage clothing. The owner thinks she has the exact dress. Same designer, same year, same color. She's sending me photos tomorrow. That's wonderful, dear. Sandra, can I ask you something? Of course. Did you know that dress was Marcus's anniversary gift to you? I smiled. She'd been doing her research. Yes, Jessica. I knew. The boutique owner told me he came in 3 different times, trying to find the perfect dress. He said he wanted something that would remind you of your wedding dress, but be appropriate for your 25th anniversary dinner. My throat tightened. I hadn't known that detail. He spent hours describing you to her, trying to make sure the color and style would be perfect. She said she'd never had a customer care so much about getting something exactly right. I had to take a moment before I could speak. I didn't know that. Sandra, I want you to know that I understand now. This wasn't just about the dress. This was about someone destroying something precious that represented your marriage, your memories, your love story. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I felt tears coming. Yes, I said quietly.
It was.
I'm going to make this right. I promise you. That night, I looked at the stained dress, still hanging in my closet where I'd left it as evidence. For the first time, I touched the fabric gently, remembering the night Marcus had given it to me. How proud he'd been, how beautiful he'd said I looked. Maybe Jessica could find a replacement. Maybe she couldn't. But for the first time, I felt like she understood what she had taken from me. And that, I realized, might be worth more than any dress. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a courier service that required a signature. Jessica had called the night before to let me know it was coming. Sandra, I hope this is right. I hope it's perfect. I need it to be perfect. There was something in her voice, a vulnerability I'd never heard before. I waited until after my morning coffee to open it. The box was from an estate sale company in Connecticut, carefully wrapped and cushioned. Inside was a garment bag, and inside that, I caught my breath. It was perfect. Not just similar, identical. The same designer, the same year, the same exact shade of cream silk. Even the label was the same. It was as if Jessica had somehow traveled back in time and purchased the dress from the same boutique where Marcus had bought mine. My hands shook as I held it up to the light. It was in pristine condition, as if it had never been worn.
My phone rang.
Sandra? Did it arrive? Is it right? Jessica, I said, my voice tight with emotion. Where did you find this? The estate sale company found it in a wealthy woman's closet in Greenwich. She had bought it the same year as yours, but never wore it. The tags were still on it. The tags are still on this one, too. Really? Sandra, are you happy with it? I looked at the dress, and for a moment, I could almost see Marcus standing there, proud and nervous, hoping I would love his gift. Jessica, I need to see you. Can you come over? Of course. Right now. Yes. An hour later, Jessica stood in my living room, nervously twisting her hands. She looked different, less polished, more human. Her hair was in a simple ponytail, her makeup minimal, her clothes casual but appropriate. Jessica, this dress is perfect. Relief flooded her face. Really? Really? But I need to ask you something. How much did this cost? She hesitated. Sandra, that's not important. It is to me. It was expensive. How expensive?
$12,000.
I sat down heavily. That was more than most people made in several months. Jessica, you don't have $12,000. I sold my jewelry. The pieces you helped David buy for our engagement and wedding. I sold all of it.
Ister her.
You sold your engagement ring? And my wedding band and the diamond earrings and the necklace. I sold everything. David let you do that? David helped me do it. He said that making this right was more important than keeping jewelry we couldn't really afford in the first place. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about finding a replacement dress. This was about sacrifice. This was about putting their money where their apologies were. Why, Jessica? Why would you do that? She sat down across from me, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but steady. Because I finally understood what I had destroyed. Not just a dress, but a memory, a love story, a piece of your marriage that you could never get back. Tears were forming in her eyes. Sandra, I've spent the last month learning about you and Marcus. I talked to people who knew you both. I heard stories about your marriage, your love for each other, the life you built together. And I realized that I had been so focused on taking from you that I never bothered to understand what you had already lost. She wiped her eyes. You lost the love of your life. You lost your partner, your best friend, the man who chose that dress specifically for you because he wanted to see you smile. And then I came along and destroyed one of the few tangible reminders you had of his love. I was crying now too. Jessica. I can't give you back your husband. I can't undo the grief or the loneliness or the pain of losing him. But I could find this dress. I could show you that I understand, finally, what you've been trying to tell me. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small wrapped box. This is for you too. I opened it. Inside was a simple silver locket, vintage, beautiful. I found it at the same estate sale. I thought maybe you could put a picture of Marcus inside. I opened the locket. Inside was already a photo. Marcus and me on our wedding day, young and radiant, and impossibly in love. How did you? David gave me the photo. He said you might like to have Marcus close to your heart. I looked at this woman who had been my enemy, who had caused me so much pain, who had just spent $12,000 and sold her jewelry to buy me a dress and a locket because she finally understood what love looked like. Sandra, she said softly, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I can't take back 3 years of being horrible to you. But I want you to know that you've changed me. This whole experience has changed me.
How?
I've learned what real strength looks like. I've learned what real love looks like. I've learned that being beautiful and young and popular doesn't mean anything if you're not a good person. She stood up. I don't expect your forgiveness. I don't expect us to suddenly be best friends. But I want you to know that I will never again take your kindness for granted. I will never again treat you with anything less than the respect you deserve. I looked at the dress, at the locket, at this transformed woman standing in my living room. Jessica, sit down. She sat. I want to tell you something. The night Marcus gave me that dress, we went to dinner at our favorite restaurant. It was a little Italian place downtown, not fancy, but special to us because it's where we had our first date. Jessica listened intently. During dinner, Marcus told me that he had chosen that particular dress because he wanted me to feel as beautiful as I had on our wedding day. He said that after 25 years, I was even more beautiful to him than when we first met. I smiled at the memory. After dinner, we came home and danced in the living room to our wedding song. I was wearing that dress, and I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. That's beautiful. When you ruined that dress, you weren't just destroying fabric. You were destroying one of my most precious memories. You were taking away something that connected me to the happiest night of my life with the man I loved more than anything. Jessica was crying again.
I'm so sorry, Sandra.
I'm so incredibly sorry. But do you know what?
What?
Finding this replacement, learning about Marcus and me, making the effort to understand what you had taken away, that means something. That means you're not the same person who spilled wine on my dress and told me to get over it. I stood up and walked to her. Jessica, I forgive you. She looked up at me, shocked. You do?
I do.
Not because what you did was okay, but because you've proven that you understand why it wasn't okay. You've shown me that you're capable of growth, of empathy, of real remorse. I held out my hand to help her up. And more than that, you've shown me that you're capable of love. Real love. The kind that makes sacrifices. The kind that puts someone else's healing ahead of your own comfort. She stood, and for the first time we hugged. Really hugged. Like family. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving me back my memory. 6 months later, my life looked completely different. Jessica and David came for dinner every Sunday. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Jessica would arrive early to help cook, and we would spend the afternoon talking while we prepared the meal. She was interested in my stories now, asking questions about my childhood, my marriage, my dreams. David was different too. More attentive, more thoughtful. He called me regularly just to check in, remembering details about my doctor's appointments and social events. He seemed to have rediscovered that I was a person worth knowing, not just a mother to be tolerated. The cream dress hung in my closet, unworn but treasured. Sometimes I would touch it and think about Marcus, about love, about second chances, and the possibility of healing even the deepest wounds. Jessica had started her own small business, a vintage clothing consulting service that helped people find special occasion pieces with history and meaning. She was good at it, and more importantly, she was passionate about it in a way I'd never seen her passionate about anything before. I love helping people understand the stories behind their clothes, she told me one Sunday afternoon as we prepared dinner. Every vintage piece has a history, a love story, a memory attached to it. Like my dress. Like your dress. I've learned that when you buy vintage, you're not just buying fabric. You're buying someone's joy, someone's special moment. David had been promoted at work, not because of my connections this time, but because of his own merit. He was building his own reputation, his own success, independent of my influence. They had moved out of my house and into a smaller place they could actually afford. It was modest but comfortable, and when I visited, I could see they were proud of it in a way they'd never been proud of the house I'd provided. We're building our own life now, David told me. It's smaller, but it's ours. Jessica had thrown herself into making amends in ways I hadn't expected. She volunteered at a senior center, helping elderly women with their wardrobes and makeup for special occasions. She said it reminded her that aging was a privilege, not a curse. I used to think getting older was the worst thing that could happen to someone, she told me. Now I realize that getting older means you get to accumulate wisdom, memories, love stories. You get to become who you're really meant to be. She had also privately reached out to apologize to other people she felt she had wronged over the years. Her sister, who she had dismissed as boring for choosing motherhood over career. Former friends she had dropped when they couldn't keep up with her expensive lifestyle. Even her ex-boss, who she had blamed for her leaving a job when the real issue had been her own attitude. I realized that the way I treated you wasn't unique, she explained. I had been treating a lot of people badly because I thought I was better than them. You just happened to be in a position to show me consequences. But perhaps the biggest change was in how Jessica talked about herself. Gone was the constant need to prove her worth through possessions and appearances. She seemed more comfortable in her own skin, more confident in a way that didn't require putting others down. I spent so many years trying to be impressive, she said one evening as we sat in my garden, drinking wine and watching the sunset. I never realized that being kind was more impressive than being beautiful or rich or popular. Harold came to dinner occasionally, and he was amazed by the transformation. I've seen a lot of legal revenge in my career, he told me privately. But I've never seen anyone use consequences to actually change someone for the better. Most people just get angry and resentful. What made the difference? I asked. I think it was that you never made it personal. You made it about behavior and consequences, not about punishment or humiliation. You gave them a path to redemption. The house that David and Jessica had lived in was now rented to a young family with children. I enjoyed having the laughter and energy of kids in the space again. Sometimes I would bring them cookies and listen to their stories, remembering when David was their age. As for me, I was traveling more. I had finally taken that trip to Tuscany, and it was everything Marcus and I had dreamed it would be. I brought him with me in the locket Jessica had given me, and I felt his presence in the vineyards and hilltop towns we had planned to explore together. I was also dating someone, a kind, intelligent man named Thomas, who I'd met at a book club. It felt strange at first, but Jessica had been surprisingly supportive. Marcus would want you to be happy, she told me. He would want you to have love in your life. She was right, of course. Marcus had always been generous with his love, and he would have wanted the same for me. One Sunday evening, as we were finishing dinner, Jessica brought up something that had been on her mind. Sandra, I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Of course. Do you think you would have eventually forgiven me if I hadn't been able to find the dress? I considered the question seriously. I think I would have forgiven you for trying. The dress was important, but what was more important was seeing that you understood what you had taken from me. But what if I had been a different person? What if I had just gotten angry about the consequences and never learned anything? Then you would have lost your house and your car, and David would have eventually had to choose between his wife and his mother. David looked up from his wine. What do you think I would have chosen? I think, I said carefully, that you would have chosen Jessica, and I would have lost my son. And I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if there was something I could have done differently. The table was quiet for a moment. But that's not what happened, Jessica said softly.
No.
That's not what happened. Instead, I got my son back. I got a daughter-in-law who actually wants to know me. And I learned that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are capable of the greatest change. Jessica reached across the table and took my hand. Sandra, I want you to know something. You saved my marriage. What do you mean? I was becoming someone David was starting to resent. He was too kind to say anything, but I could see it in his eyes sometimes. The way I treated people, the way I acted entitled to everything, it was making him ashamed of me. David nodded.
She's right.
I loved Jessica, but I didn't always like who she was becoming. When you forced me to look at myself honestly, Jessica continued, you gave me the chance to become someone worth loving again. Someone David could be proud of. I felt tears coming again. It seemed like that happened a lot these days, but they were good tears, healing tears. You gave yourselves that chance, I said. I just provided the motivation. Later that evening, after they had gone home, I sat in my living room with the replacement dress laid across my lap. I had finally decided what I wanted to do with it. I called Jessica. Jessica, I want you to have the dress.
What? Sandra, no.
I bought that for you. And it was the most meaningful gift anyone has given me since Marcus died. But I want you to have it for your future. I don't understand. Someday, you and David will celebrate your 25th anniversary. When that day comes, I want you to wear this dress and remember what love looks like, what forgiveness looks like, what it means to fight for your marriage and your family. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Sandra, I can't accept that. Yes, you can. Because by then, you'll understand what it means to have something precious that represents your love story. And you'll take care of it the way it deserves to be taken care of. Are you sure? I'm sure. Besides, I have something better now. What's that? I have a daughter. 2 years later, I was getting ready for David and Jessica's 5th wedding anniversary party when my phone rang. Sandra? It was Jessica, and she sounded stressed. I need help. What's wrong, sweetheart? I'm trying to get ready for tonight, and I can't decide what to wear. I know it sounds silly, but I want to look perfect. David's whole family will be there, and some of his colleagues, and I want to make a good impression. I smiled. Even transformed, Jessica still had moments of insecurity. Jessica, what does your heart tell you to wear? The cream dress. The one you gave me. But Sandra, what if something happens to it? What if someone spills something on it? I couldn't bear it if... Jessica. Yes, wear the dress. But what if? Wear the dress. It's meant to be worn, meant to be part of your love story. That's what Marcus would have wanted for his anniversary gift. That's what I want. Are you sure? I'm sure.
And Jessica?
Yes. You're going to look beautiful. That evening, I arrived at the anniversary party to find Jessica absolutely radiant in the cream silk dress. She glowed with happiness, confidence, and something I'd never seen in her before: peace. The party was lovely. Intimate, elegant, filled with people who genuinely cared about David and Jessica. I watched them together, seeing how they looked at each other now with real respect and affection. They had built something authentic together, something that didn't depend on my money or anyone else's approval. During the toasts, David stood up to speak. 5 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman I'd ever met. But if I'm being honest, I'm not sure I really knew who she was. And I'm not sure she knew who she was either. He looked at Jessica with such love that it took my breath away. Over the past 2 years, I've watched my wife become the woman she was always meant to be. Kind, thoughtful, generous, strong. She's taught me about courage, about growth, about what it means to really change. He turned to look at me. But none of that would have been possible without my mother. A murmur went through the crowd. 2 years ago, my mom taught us both some very hard lessons about respect, gratitude, and consequences. She could have destroyed us completely, and we would have deserved it. Instead, she gave us the chance to become better people. Jessica stood up and took his hand. David's right, she said, her voice clear and strong. 2 years ago, I was someone who took everything for granted and treated people badly because I thought there were no consequences. Sandra taught me that there are always consequences, but she also taught me that there's always a chance for redemption if you're willing to do the work. She looked directly at me. Sandra, you didn't just save my marriage.
You saved me.
You showed me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like, and what it means to be a woman of substance. The crowd was listening intently, clearly moved by the emotion in her voice. Everyone here tonight should know that the life David and I have built together was only possible because this incredible woman refused to let us settle for being less than we could be. She demanded better from us, and she gave us the tools to become better. She raised her glass. To Sandra Emanson, who taught us that it's never too late to learn, never too late to change, and never too late to become the people we're meant to be. The entire room toasted me, and I felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the wine. Later that evening, as the party was winding down, Jessica found me on the terrace. Sandra, there's something I need to tell you. What's that, sweetheart? She was fidgeting with her wedding ring, clearly nervous about something. David and I are pregnant. I felt my heart skip a beat. Pregnant. 3 months. We wanted to wait until tonight to tell everyone. I looked at this beautiful, transformed woman who was going to make me a grandmother, and I felt a joy I hadn't experienced since Marcus was alive. Oh, Jessica. Oh, my dear girl. We hugged, both of us crying happy tears. Sandra, I want you to know something. This baby is going to grow up knowing what an amazing grandmother they have. They're going to hear stories about your strength, your wisdom, your capacity for forgiveness. And they're going to hear stories about their mother's courage and their father's love. I hope we can be the kind of parents you and Marcus were to David. You will be. I know you will be. As the evening ended and the guests departed, I found myself alone with David and Jessica, helping them clean up. Mom, David said, loading glasses into the dishwasher. I want to ask you something. What's that? Are you happy? Really happy? I looked around at the remnants of a beautiful evening celebrating a love that had been tested and emerged stronger. I thought about the grandchild who would soon be part of our family. I thought about Thomas, who would be taking me to dinner tomorrow night. I thought about my travels, my friendships, my full and meaningful life. Yes, I said. I'm really happy. Good, Jessica said, hanging up dish towels. Because you deserve to be happy. You deserve to have people in your life who appreciate you. As I drove home that night, I thought about the woman who had spilled wine on my dress 2 years ago and told me to get over it. That woman was gone, replaced by someone I was proud to call my daughter-in-law. I thought about my son, who had dismissed my feelings and told me not to be dramatic. He was gone too, replaced by a man who understood the value of the people who loved him. And I thought about myself, the woman who had sat in a stained dress, humiliated and dismissed in her own home. She was gone as well, replaced by someone who understood her own power and wasn't afraid to use it when necessary. When I got home, I poured myself a glass of wine, good wine, from a bottle Thomas had brought me, and sat in my garden. I pulled out my phone and called Harold. Sandra, how was the party? Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And how are the happy couple? Pregnant. Congratulations, Grandma. How does it feel? I looked up at the stars, thinking about Marcus, about love, about the surprising ways life can change when you refuse to accept less than you deserve. It feels like victory, I said. The sweetest kind of victory? The sweetest kind. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of my garden and smiled. Not the polite, accommodating smile I'd worn for years when people treated me badly. Not the cold, calculating smile I'd worn when I was planning my revenge. This was a different smile entirely. This was the smile of a woman who had demanded respect and received it, who had faced down cruelty with consequence and emerged with love, who had refused to be dismissed and had, in the process, saved not just her own dignity, but her family's future. Jessica had been wrong about many things, but she'd been right about one. I had gotten the last laugh. But the beautiful thing about this particular last laugh was that everyone was laughing with me. And that's Sandra's story. A reminder that we teach people how to treat us, and sometimes the most loving thing we can do is enforce consequences with courage and grace. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to remember their own power. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real stories of resilience, justice, and the incredible strength that comes from knowing your worth. And remember, you're never too old to demand the respect you deserve, and you're never too old to write a new chapter in your story. Until next time, remember, your story isn't over. The best chapters might still be ahead.